Then I took a smidge and applied it down there.
This one's wife. Financially fucked. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I've explained previously that money is hugely important to a somatic narcissist such as this one's wife. Money is a residual benefit. The presence of money allows her to do certain things that makes it easier to control people. She can buy them things, for instance, what is in effect a bribe. She can afford for PR puff pieces to make her look good. She can buy security, which causes people to perhaps turn their heads and say, "Oh, who's this important individual?" It allows her to do certain things, go to certain places that draw reactions which provide her with fuel, and it helps her manage her facade. Accordingly, money is massively important to her. Of course, it also is relevant with regard to the fact that it has to pay for a large house because she can triangulate people with the large house. Look at me, I'm successful. I live in a house with 27,000 flushing toilets. It allows her to utilize money to afford expensive clothing because she thinks she looks beautiful in them. It allows her to travel and go around the world. So again, she can triangulate people with all of that. Thus, money is hugely important to her as a somatic narcissist. It links in directly with the pursuit of the prime aims. One of the major difficulties that exists for the Sussexes is that you have a pair of individuals who essentially are always going to run into money problems. Why? Well, take Harry. Harry has grown up with a life of privilege. He didn't choose it, it's not his fault, but that's what he's had. He's never really had a proper job. Yes, he spent time in the army and undertook 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan, but again, his role there was managed. When has he ever had to sit down and write his CV, for example, his resume? When has he ever had to attend a job interview? Does he know the ins and outs of budgeting? No, it's always been taken care for him. Accordingly, he has no real concept of the value of money. It's always been there. Someone else has always provided. He's never really needed to think about it. And therefore, that doesn't produce a hunger with him for that money, and nor does it create an ability to budget and manage finances. With regard to this one's wife, she certainly has a hunger for money as a consequence of her somatic narcissism. But the problem that she has with regard to getting that money is she hasn't got any talent. Furthermore, she's no charisma, and even worse, she's unpopular. Accordingly, you've got one individual who's never really had to properly work in his life, and is he going to start doing that now? Of course he's not. He just relies upon privilege, and this is why the rumours of him trying to make contact with his father because he's skint have such credence. With her, she comes up with various schemes. Time and time again she sought to do so, but they never succeed because it's her. She thinks it should succeed because it's her. That's the delusion of her narcissism. But the schemes don't succeed because they're cack-handed, ill-thought out, and she never puts any real effort in because of her sense of entitlement. Thus, you've got, in effect, 2 individuals with champagne tastes who've got basically beer budgets, or perhaps even less than that now. And it's always going to result in a problem. The likelihood is they are financially fucked. And Alison Boshoff, writing in the Mail, provides quite a detailed breakdown with regard to their finances, which does point to the fact that they are in financial trouble. The article starts off by explaining that this one's wife originally posted links on the Shop My e-commerce site. Apparently, some of the top creators make up to $1 million a year, with a cut of between 10 and 30% per item, depending on the retailer. After an initial flurry on the site, in which this one's wife directed shoppers to the sweater she wore in her Netflix show, With Love Meghan, the denim dress she wore on a date night with Prince Harry to watch Beyoncé, and her makeup and hair favourites, she's then fallen silent. In fact, she's not posted in over 2 months on Shop My, and it seems that her ranking has dropped. What a surprise! This one's wife hasn't been able to stick at something once again. This is as a consequence of the short-term nature of her narcissism, that she is completely unable to see something through. Thus, the cash rewards didn't appear to merit any further effort because her narcissism determined that it wasn't worth doing. But what's the position with regard to their money? Well, the situation is such that they purchased, of course, their house, and they're widely reported to have taken out a mortgage, with repayments apparently standing at $480,000 a year. So that's a fair old chunk they need to find. On top of this, there's a property tax of $68,000 a year. Utilities are estimated at $24,000 a year, which I think is a little bit on the low side for a property of that size, but there we are. Staffing apparently costs $250,000, and security is said to cost up to $3 million a year. That all adds up to needing to clear around $4 million a year between the two of them after tax. That's quite a task, writes Alison Beauchoff. But let's not forget, there's the cost of PR to be added to that, and the legal costs that Harry has been incurring. Harry is on the hook for several £1,000,000, both in terms of what he owes his lawyers and what he has to pay the government. If you don't actually have a proper job and you need to clear $4 million a year after tax for your domestic running costs and your security costs, then it doesn't leave much room for you to be able to pay legal costs, does it? Which again leads to destination financially fucked. Sources also indicate that the price Harry and this one's wife pay to run their Archwell production company is significant, around $3 million a year, which as an overhead commitment is quite big by Hollywood standards. Naturally, some of those costs will come out of the charity funds, but they're not exactly getting huge amounts of donations through Archwell. You don't really hear of them doing a lot in respect of Archwell, and they have to use some of that money to actually dole it out by way of charitable donations. Accordingly, if the overheads for Archwell are $3 million, that again places a significant burden on them with regard to costing that. Now, whilst this will be set up as a separate incorporated entity, so it won't impact upon them personally if it were to go pop, the fact remains that if they're not bringing much in by way of donations, and recent figures confirm that to be the case, and they've got an overhead of $3 million, well, the grift in relation to Archwell doesn't prove as attractive. In the past, we know that they have been feeding certain costs into Archwell as expenses. Well, if Archwell's money is all being taken up on the overhead of the staff, that's not going to leave much for this one's wife and Harry to utilise, is it? With regard to Netflix, the article explains if Harry and this one's wife had been really getting $100 million over 5 years from Netflix as a steady rate of $20 million a year, then their current financial situation would have been taken care of. But a source with knowledge of the Netflix deal says it's never worked out like that. They said, from speaking to someone with knowledge of the deal, it looks like they've probably managed to keep around $10 to $15 million, or a touch more, purely for themselves over the nearly 5 years so far. But that kind of money isn't going to last long with their lifestyle. Well, if they've been able to keep, let's just say, $20 million of it, and after tax, that leaves them with something like, I don't know, in the region of 14 to 16 million, given the overheads that they have, that's going to be eaten up in around 4 years, excluding legal costs, excluding costs of clothing, excluding holiday costs, excluding legal costs. What about the future of Netflix income? Well, as you're aware, Netflix released viewing figures for With Love, Meghan, revealing it was a relative flop, ranking at number 389 in their 6-monthly engagement report with just 5.3 million viewers across the globe. Put that into context, the British drama Adolescence got 145 million viewers. The drama Missing You got 58 million viewers, and Department Q got 25 million. If you haven't watched Department Q, I'd recommend you do so. It's very good. Harry's polo was ranked at 3,442. Therefore, 500,000 views that it received puts us on a par with reruns of a 9-year-old cartoon, He-Man, Masters of the Universe. Yet, the delusion of these two is that their Netflix deal will be renewed. Well, if it is, and there's no guarantee, based upon the lack of performance so far, it's possible that the deal might be renewed, but at a much lower amount as they hang around, hoping to catch the inevitable divorce. In other words, the level of income that would come in from it is unlikely to cover their yearly overhead. There was a Spotify deal, but only a small percentage of the headline deal of $20 million was actually received because only one series was delivered by this one's wife. She had the deal with Lemonarda, which, as I pointed out previously, would not have been particularly lucrative for her. And therefore, not only are they burning through the money pretty quickly, given the size of the overheads that they have, there's nothing on the horizon which suggests that it's going to be able to bail them out. What about Prince Harry's paychecks? Well, the article explains he has 2 paying jobs, and perhaps we use that in its most elastic sense. One with Travelist, a company that promotes sustainable tourism, and one with BetterUp. It's difficult to know precisely what he receives. The Atlanta company BetterUp reports revenues of $215 million in 2024, but what that relates to in profit and how much Harry's getting out of that, well, it's not going to be a huge sum. And Travelist only has assets of £320,000, which means if he's taking any money out of Travelist, it's not going to be significant, and certainly not with regard to what he needs to cover their overheads. Quite simply, it would appear that they would be looking at needing to earn somewhere in the region of, subject to the relevant taxation rate, about $7 million a year. And they might have been able to do that so far because of the Netflix deal and a bit from Spotify and other factors as well, paid engagements in Colombia and Nigeria. But there's nothing really on the horizon, is there? And if those overheads remain constant at needing to clear $4 million after tax, and that doesn't include PR puff pieces, which we all know Madam loves, clothing, transport costs, that it doesn't also cover the significant legal costs that Harry has incurred. It all points to one thing. They're financially fucked. And this lends credence to the suggestion that they're trying to find a way back into the royal family, at the very least to get bailed out by King Charles. All of this is horrendous news for this one's wife, and it poses something of a dilemma for her narcissism. As I've explained to you before, Harry will only be retained to the extent that he's of any use to her, and if he proves to be useless, she's likely to disengage. But the problem that she's got is that there's nothing else on the horizon for her in terms of an alternative person that she could turn to. Also, her narcissism will recognise that she's nothing without the royal connection, and thus this means that she has to tolerate Harry, and if she were unable to find somebody else, she's not going to let go of him because this would mean financial Armageddon for her. Thus, undoubtedly, she'll be placing Harry under pressure to get bailed out from the Bank of Par, which will undoubtedly be causing significant tensions in the Monty Shit Show household because Harry doesn't know how to go about it. Charles is unlikely to bail him out to the extent that they want to be bailed out, and certainly not just writing blank checks for them to carry on living the way that they are. If he is minded to assist, it will certainly come with significant conditions attached. It's not looking good for the Sussexes. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.